This is the emergency broadcast system. We are under attack by conventional forces of the Russian army. It is believed the lead waves were disguised as commercial charter flights. Communications have broken down with other parts of the country. Large areas of the Midwest may have been overrun.
They're gonna kill us! All of us! So why should we be different? Because we live here! Not bad for a bunch of kids, huh?
Mama'd be real proud.
Hey everybody, welcome to You Have to Watch This podcast. I'm Alan.
I'm Ryan.
And I'm Devin.
And joining us from Nerfherders Assemble, we have Joshua.
What's up? How's it going?
Pretty good. Before we get into Red Dawn, which was a film that you picked, tell us a little bit about what you guys do over at Nerfherders Assemble.
Well, we're just a movie, entertainment, TV, whatever, podcast. I met the guys over at Nerfherders Assemble at a con. I was selling my comics and my books, and they came up and interviewed me and then had me on the show, and we found out that we loved the same type of nerd culture stuff, and then I started guest starring on their podcast a little more, and then became a regular, and a couple years later I'm still doing it. So Seth and I are we're like two peas in a pod. We like the same things. We talk about a lot of the same things. And then when we argue, we really get into it. So we're perfect for a podcast.
Love that.
So what was the last thing you guys talked about on your show?
Well, it's kind of been off and on lately for this month. We've had some things come up. I had some computer problems. He does a lot of other gigs on the side. So I think we talked about the first couple episodes of Falcon and the Winter Soldier. And he was going to watch Invincible. We were going to have an episode on that this week, but then things happened. So I think we're going to wait till next week and talk about the wrap up for Falcon and the Winter Soldier and what else is coming from Marvel, especially with that Shang-Chi trailer that dropped yesterday. So a lot of exciting things coming down the line there.
I'm not huge on like martial arts movies, but that trailer looked awesome, and I am pumped. Because one of the films on the list that you gave us of options was The Raid 2, and I was like, I want to watch that, but I feel like closer to Shang-Chi we'll get into that. So just to tie it in.
Raid 2 it's an amazing film. It's got to be like the most violent, well choreographed movie I've ever seen. And that trailer for Shang-Chi was beautiful. It was great, and and it wasn't Ben Kingsley as the Mandarin. So I almost said the Mandalorian. So as long as it's not Ben Kingsley, either, I'm good. Yeah, that's true.
As much as I get why everyone hates that twist in Iron Man 3, I still love that movie. I think that's my favorite Iron Man movie. So
it's easy to love as an Iron Man movie, though.
Yeah,
sure.
I'm just a huge Shane Black fan. So, but all right. So, I put in the chat the link to your guys' YouTube channel, so you can click that if you're watching us on Twitch. If not, we'll tag him in the comments on Facebook down below. If Facebook will load for me, there we go.
I heard you guys just did a con like 2 weeks ago, right?
We did the Main Street Waynesboro Comic-Con.
Nice.
And we had a bunch of merch made up, and it was just me there, but we had friend of the show Lou and friend of the show Angela there to help me hand out stuff and cover the booth while I was doing panels and taking video and all that. It was a lot of fun. Hopefully people out there watching met us there. If not, they're doing it again in September. So yeah, it was a good time. Got to meet a lot of.
I had my first con in a year and a half was this weekend. The Quad Con came to Omaha. Never been to Omaha before, and it was a cheap booth. And I was like, I got to get back out there. I miss people. So yeah, it was fun.
Yeah,
Oh, man.
it's nice being able to see people do things a little bit more easily now. Like there's still social distancing
Yeah.
and masks, and there
Sure.
will be for a while. But it's just nice being at a con and being able to see people cosplaying and just having fun, enjoying the stuff around them. It was my sister's first con, and she's like, "This is kind of cool. Like, thanks for bringing me to my first con." I was like, "You're welcome. Let's do it again."
Aw.
That's cool.
So,
That's cool.
yeah, hopefully we'll be doing more of those in the near future. So if you missed us a few weeks ago, you'll be able to catch us then. But without further ado, let's get into Josh's pick for today, which is Red Dawn. Josh, tell us a little bit about the film.
Red Dawn is a 1984 classic. It's basically about, you know, what would happen if World War III was started in the U.S. if we were invaded in the heart of the U.S. By the Cubans, the Soviet Union, and I think the Nicaraguan armies, and you know, how would we react? How would the small town people in the middle of the country react? And just kind of played on the fears of the time, and you know, just the idea of guerrilla warfare, but on the American plane. And yeah, ever since I saw it as a kid, I've just loved it so much.
So when we picked this from the list of films you gave us, we realized we had three different situations going on here. I have never seen Red Dawn, either version. Devin, you have seen this version before, correct?
In social studies class in high school.
Okay.
Yep.
And Ryan, you've seen the Chris Hemsworth, Josh Peck remake.
Yes.
Okay.
I feel for you so much.
So Devin,
We're going to have a lot to talk about.
so Devin, what was it like watching this in high school in class?
Oh, it was the best. I mean, it was always awesome watching a movie in class because I was never one that like loved social studies. And this movie just made it so much better because it came out of nowhere. I'd never heard of this movie. No one's ever like told me about it. But like the whole time I was like, Patrick Swayze's not dancing in this. He's actually awesome. Like it was such like a treat. And we watched it over like 4 days because it's like way too long for a social studies class. And it was the best.
That's not the first time I saw it, but we watched it in social studies as well. And we watched Gattaca. We watched Gattaca in science, and we watched something. Oh yeah, I loved experiencing movies in school. That was like the best part of school.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
We watched Gattaca in English class. Like, I don't know why.
What?
It tied into one of the short stories we read. It made no sense. I remember in social studies freshman year, they had us watch The Patriot with Mel Gibson.
Yep.
But
Yep,
it was
watched that one too.
The way they got away with it was they taped it off of TBS, the Superstation. So it was all censored, and they could show it in a classroom to a bunch of 13-year-olds.
You didn't do the cool like parents rated R film parent slip?
No, they did not. There was I did take a music and film class in high school, and the one day we had a sub, they had to show us clips of different movies. I feel like I've told this story before, but it's quick. They were like changing out the DVDs and putting in like a scene from Superman, a scene from Saturday Night Fever. But with the Saturday Night Fever scene, they didn't realize that they had to cover up the screen for the next scene, which was just like topless nudity. So a bunch of us like, wait, what? Like, so
go back. Yeah.
And that's the story of Alan's sexual awakening.
Yes. So more about Patrick Swayze. No. All right. So Ryan, since you've only seen the remake, what did you know about this version of the of Red Dawn?
Just the premise of what the remake was based off of.
Okay.
Like I'd seen it in, like Blockbuster or like 48 Hours and places like that, but I'd never seen it. So,
Is this the one movie from the 80s you hadn't seen?
Probably. In all honesty, probably.
Because
if it makes you feel better, Romana walked past while I was watching it. She goes, "Ryan picked this, didn't he?" And I'm like, "No, he didn't."
that is fantastic.
Yeah.
I hope you guys can hear Ryan. I can't hear him. I can see his like square lighting up, but I can't hear him on my side.
Oh no.
I can see your reactions to hearing him, so hopefully everybody else can.
I had to go from my mobile data to the Wi-Fi
Wow.
at one point, so I think that might have had something to do with it.
Yeah, Devin, you can hear him fine, right?
I can, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. That sucks. So I guess we'll just be the middleman for Ryan until hopefully Discord fixes itself.
Could he
just throw in different reactions to the light up? It'd be like,
just make it up as we go along.
So Josh, what do you like about this film? What made you be like, okay, I want to have these guys watch this?
You know what? I'm sure a big chunk of it is just nostalgia, but before I was old enough to go to Blockbuster and get my old films, I had to rely on the VHS library of recorded stuff from TV that I had at home and my grandpa had. So, we had Empire Strikes Back, we had The Last Starfighter, we had Red Dawn, and we had a couple other timely classics recorded from late night on the Fox channel or whatever it was. So I just, those were the ones that I'd watch time and time and time again. And Red Dawn was just like, it was just something I was growing up watching. It was, it was the idea that, these kids could band together and face, the odds and live in the countryside and avenge their family. It was just all like the right chemistry for me as a kid growing up. I loved action films. I loved justice and yeah, it was just like the right feel for a film. And then it was also like the commentary was there, and it was a longer drawn out film, the seasons that changed throughout the film, and it took its time. And it was just different from it felt like a different film to me than, missing in action or the Rambo films or something. It felt more grounded, and I just related to it that much more as a young kid.
Yeah, it's a very simple film. There's not much fancy stuff going on. There's not any like special effects besides like practical explosions. The lighting is all natural for the most part. Like when they're outside, you can actually see the clouds covering the sun because the scenes get dark, and like the camera adjusts. So it's like very practical in that sense, and I really enjoyed that. It's a very bare bones film, I guess, is what I'm trying to say.
Well, I think that might be to its service, though, because that helps you watch the characters grow, and it really kind of puts them at the forefront of all of it.
Yeah.
Which I think is cool.
It felt separate. I mean, it was shown from their perspective. You weren't getting these, switch to a scene where you see everything from the army side or the war in the ocean or things on the news. It was very contained. They were separated and cut off from the world, and you felt the same. So you only got to see what was going on when they got to see it. And that was just so different to me as a kid watching that. And it is very bare bones, but I think it does it to that service. That was the point, isolation.
The weirdest thing about this movie is it does cut away to like the general in the town a lot. And I found that off-putting because you do like you're focused on this group of kids, but then you have this other story that it seems like it's going somewhere, and then it eventually does. But it's just kind of like, why do I care about this guy? Like, I know he's the bad guy, but it just felt off with the way they were telling the story.
Well, from
I did cut back. I'm sorry. That's probably my bad, Ryan.
It's okay. From my point of view, watching his character, I was actually waiting for that because they established that he was Cuban. And 1984, the general audience would know about the Cuban Revolution and where that guy came from. So when he started talking about how, like, I used to be the rebel, I used to be the resistance, and now I'm the one I fought against, I was waiting for that statement to happen. And when it did, I was like, yep, I'm all behind this guy. I don't know where he's going, but I really want to see his arc.
Yeah.
And so it was like, as soon as they established that he was Cuban and they show his, like, facial expressions occasionally, I was like, oh, I really hope this guy turns.
Okay. Yeah, I guess I'm not brushed up on my Cuban history and didn't really realize about the Cuban Revolution. So
I mean, it's not something that I thought about, but it definitely added a level of depth to their character, or to his character.
Yeah.
That did make me want to see, like what you said, made me want to see more of him and more of where his story was going.
Yeah.
I think also full disclosure, I think it was late at night and I didn't feel like reading subtitles.
Oh.
Come now. Come on.
I know. It was just that I read them. So
They happen.
Now we know why you didn't want to watch The Raid 2 is because of the subtitles.
Subtitles.
hey, I made them watch Parasite, so
Okay. All right.
That's his penance.
Yeah.
all right. So I'm trying to think where we can go from here.
Well, I want to know just off the bat, Alan and Ryan, what did you guys think of the movie?
Ryan,
Like just like bare bones opinion here, like
Bare bones opinion?
yeah.
Okay. I like the remake better.
No
I like the
way.
remake better.
I do. Now,
what did he say? He liked the remake better?
Yeah.
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 I gotta go,
yeah,
guys.
see, this-
I'm gonna
Now-
check out of here.
Now here. Once I explain this later in the episode, you guys will understand why. Okay? Because it's not that I feel that the original is a bad movie. I liked it. It's just I like what they did with the characters and the story in the second one compared to what they did to the first one. They're both good equally, as far as I'm concerned. I would definitely recommend both of these movies to people, not just one of them.
Okay.
Not just one over the other.
All right. So you recommend them both, but you'll get into details about why you like the remake later. Just catching Josh.
Yeah, because I mean, it's like, because the thing is, it's like I said, I like them both equally.
Yeah.
I like the guerrilla filming style of the first one and how gritty and almost Cold War propaganda-ish the first one is, which is amazing. But the story kind of is better in the second one. But okay, I'm done.
Okay. It's more about story in the second one for you then.
Okay.
Yeah.
I enjoyed this. I want to see more of this world. Like I do. Like I'm kind of intrigued by the remake if it does go into more of the story of things outside of the world, like outside of this group. I guess the whole idea of World War III kind of fascinates me. Not when it's like real, but in the movies, like yes, please give it to me. But no, I really enjoyed it. I like seeing Patrick Swayze. Like this is young. This is like one of the first things he did, right?
I think so.
It's definitely young.
Yeah.
Young.
Yeah.
Young Swayze, young Charlie Sheen,
Yeah.
young everybody.
Baby
Thomas
Charlie
Howell.
Sheen. Yeah.
Yeah.
Charlie Sheen
The
before
girl from Dirty Dancing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Charlie Sheen before the Tiger Blood.
Right.
Probably still on drugs though. Let's be honest. No, I really enjoyed it.
Rockstar from Mars.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed it. It's it does feel a little Cold War propaganda-y to me. And I'm not from that era. Like I'm a 90s baby, so I just got out of, like, I just missed all of that. But I still enjoy it. It's like a little time capsule of the world we live in. I think the weirdest part for me was just how they explained the world that they live in with all like the subtitles at the beginning with everything that's going on in the world. It's like we're not going to show you any of this. We're just going to tell you what's going on and then get right into history class.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well,
Well,
the movie takes
was gonna say, I mean, back then, that was all the setup you needed.
Yeah.
That was people were at the time. It was very believable that this is something that could happen. And I thought, and it wasn't a stretch, and that's what I like. We've seen so many World War III or brink of World War III type films, and it's always on a massive global level. And the fact that this was just a very contained story, and what would it look like for a town on military soil to be cut off from the rest of the country and deal with it. That's what I appreciated. It was very much a box film, and it didn't need to be more than that.
Yeah.
And you got to see, you were talking about the villains earlier, you got to see the villains from the American side as well. Like the mayor of the town was Coach Jack from the Mighty Ducks, and he was a villain in there too. Like, I don't know if he's ever not played a villain, but he plays the perfect, like, skeevy guy. He was terrible in Mighty Ducks, and he was terrible in this film. And, I just always thought that was an interesting concept of who would turn on who, and elitism and everything, but in the midst of being, prisoners of a war type thing.
I even liked how they showed just how the invasion even started. I mean, this happened maybe 5 minutes into the movie, which, like, good job, movie. Like, because they were like, all right, look, you're here to see World War III. It's happening right now. And, like, it was kind of creepy. Like, I don't remember it being that unsettling to just, like, see paratroopers dropping down outside of a classroom, like, when I was a kid. But, like, watching it as an adult, I was like, yeah, that would scare me shitless.
Well, because now you understand.
Right.
As an adult, you've seen enough that you understand the significance of, like, going outside, looking up in the sky, and be like, hey, you see a skydiver or two, and it's nothing. But you've seen enough war movies that when you look up in modern time and you go, I can't see a cloud. Those are all paratroopers?
Yeah.
And it's just that shock. And yeah, that's what I feel like. This movie is better for adults than it is kids, because it kind of hits you more.
Well, and speaking of, like, things that hit us more as adults, like, when I watched this movie in high school, I was like, yeah, it's a fun war movie. Like, this time watching around, I was like, things get really brutal and very awkwardly, like, not realistic, but realistic in this movie. And, like, I wasn't ready for it at 7 a.m. this morning.
Well, it started off with the history teacher talking about, Genghis Khan and coming in and, slowly but surely just destroying everything in its path. And that was kind of like the theme for the movie, that, slowly but surely the enemy was just closing in on this group that was hiding out in the mountains. And, you just, the longer it went, the more you felt that dread. And then the last maybe third of the movie was just like, gosh, how much longer are they going to survive this?
Yeah.
Which I really appreciated. It wasn't normal for me when I first saw this to feel such a dread and despair by the end of it. Cause there's a couple people that survive at the end, but that was kind of it. It wasn't like this big roaring, John Rambo saves the POWs and kicks in the politician's door, and America, it wasn't that, so I really appreciated the bleakness of the film for sure.
The one thing that I was confused by in the film explained later was, so we're in the Midwest of America. I'm like, okay, so you're telling me that the Russians are invading the middle of the country. I was so confused by that. Like, you got the two coastlines that Russia could come from, but we're gonna get the middle. It's like, I don't understand how that's possible. And then they explain it to me. I'm like, oh, yeah. Okay, that actually makes sense.
They list Omaha. Omaha used to be, I'm from Omaha, if I didn't say that already. Omaha used to be always listed on, man, if we were nuked first, because SAC is in Omaha, and SAC used to be like, a possible base of operations. Omaha used to be in the top 3, most likely to get hit. And so the idea that they would come in, yeah, and hold the middle and then go out from there. It was an interesting concept, but yeah, they explain it a little bit. Whether or not that's actually feasible, I don't know. But the idea that the Nicaraguans and the Cubans came up from the bottom, and then the Russians came down from top. I thought that was intriguing.
Yeah, it's always fun as you're growing up and learning that the places you've lived in the past were either on the first round or second round of like civilian sites to be nuked in a war. Because I've lived in St. Louis in the 60s, 50s, and 70s was a major city. So that was on the round of like the first civilian sites to be nuked by the Russians, and this is all stuff that was leaked or came out after the wall fell. And then my parents decided to move us to Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, and because of the steel mill, that was on the #1 list of civilian sites to get nuked. It was always fun living in towns where it's like, oh wow, yeah, no, I could have been vaporized twice.
Devin, how about you? You ever live any place that was close to being nuked?
Freaking whenever like tensions with North Korea started rising, like everybody I knew in LA was like, we're first on the list. And like, I don't know if we were first on the list, but like everyone in LA was like, of course we'd be first. They'd want to bomb Beverly Hills first.
He'd want to go after James Franco and Seth Rogen for that movie.
Right, and that's where they live.
It's an amazing film.
Go after
yes, it is.
He would want to go after Hollywood.
Well, if that's what Ryan was talking about, I was in South Korea when North Korea launched one of their first, big missiles into the ocean, and the base went on lockdown, and everybody was like, "What the hell is going on?" But they didn't tell us, like everybody. We learned with the news in the morning when we got a broadcast from the States, but it was pretty crazy. Everything just went on lockdown. We had chem suits on and everything, and
oh my gosh,
they were just gaming up. So that was intense for sure.
That's crazy. For me, it's just been like living 45 minutes away from 3 Mile Island. So more of a Chernobyl type situation for me than nuclear bombs coming in.
Equally not great though. Oh
yeah. After watching the Chernobyl miniseries, do not want any part of that either. So
gosh, that was a brutal series.
It was.
I think there is a plot hole in this film though, because Sarah Palin said that she could see Russia from her backyard. So if Alaska should have warned us that the Russians were coming, they should have known. Should have never gotten down in the Midwest.
Should have. And what was Canada doing? Canada is just like eating Tim Hortons.
They let them through.
Yeah. On Canada. I mean, we used to be friends.
It's the polite thing to do. Like, they probably said, "Can we please pass through?" And they're like, "Yeah, oh yeah, sure."
Sure.
Canada's good for commandos. I don't think their general army is going to be able to hold back the Russians. Their commandos maybe, but not
not the whole army.
General armed forces.
Oh.
Devin, how about you? Any plot holes that you saw in this?
Plot holes, jeez. No. I think probably the only like silly thing I could ever point out about the movie was the dad just no chill at all, just avenge me. Like they could have made that subtext. They could have had a conversation afterwards, like, we're doing it for dad. But no, dad had to scream it at the top of his lungs with like a bit of blood coming down his nose for special effect. Like, okay, tone it down a little bit. We get it. But honestly, that line, like shouting at my sons to avenge me, I think is like a life goal now.
I
would love that moment.
In a Soviet re-education camp.
In a Soviet re-education camp? I mean, maybe not.
He should have been shot. No. I mean, he's yelling that at the top of his lungs.
Yeah.
He would have been shot, and they would have been pulled off to the side.
I mean, it's a good point. Like, that wasn't a smart place for him to yell that.
Exactly. That would
looked around
have been
first.
the realism.
He did the whole.
Right. He could have like looked around a bit, like where the guards around. Like Ryan said, like he probably would have been shot for doing that in real life.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It was later.
Yeah.
I mean, not too much
definitely later. Yeah.
Yeah.
Chat had a good point on Facebook. They said that they think that Canada was conquered already, and that America was like the last one, and that's why like the Soviets like were able to push through Canada.
They could have gone over the North Pole to get into Canada before they would even get near Alaska, and especially if they're cutting off communication as they're going, that's definitely possible.
Well, then that bears the question: what the hell is Santa doing?
He's a commie. Santa's a commie. I'm sorry.
Santa's a commie.
Okay, so.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Mine. Yeah, mine. I mean, a lot of pots did get shot, so they did get a lot of holes.
Oh my.
Yes, you have to relay that to him.
Ryan says that a lot of pots got shot, so there were a lot of holes.
Those were his plot holes.
Yeah.
He's very
honestly. I have no plot holes for this movie.
Yeah.
All right.
I like I do like it. So.
Yeah.
That's one of the reasons why.
What do you guys have a favorite moment in this movie?
Yes.
All right.
Do you want to go first?
Sure. Yeah, I already talked about how I love the passage of time in this film. I think that every time they showed like the month, it was just that much more somber. You know, like you were hoping that this would be something quick, but it just dragged on. I really loved when the mayor's son got caught, and we were already coming off losing the colonel to the tank battle thing, but then they just started hunting. You know, that Russian came in and said, "How do you hunt a fox? You be a fox." And so they captured that mayor's kid, which he'd become part of the group, and then they almost caught him by surprise. Thankfully, they didn't. They almost caught him by the surprise, and then it was just downhill from there. And you saw the pain in the group that this was the first time that they'd been betrayed from within. And, Swayze was trying to be the alpha, and even he was having issues with it. And, his brother didn't want to have anything to do with it. And then C. Thomas Howell is like just the cold killer of the group and does what needs to be done. And I was, it's a PG-13 movie, so don't show as much as they could, but you got the sense that kid went through hell, and he was ashamed, and but it was the downfall of the group. And then after that, it was just how long till they all die, and I thought that was a big bleak moment in the film, and it always hits me because you can just hear the pain in their voices and the decisions they know they have to make.
Well, I think that was my favorite part too, because this is the second time I'd seen it. I know what happens in the movie, but even so, that scene is tense. Like, because like you could tell Patrick Swayze's really struggling with it. You can it's so well acted, and the emotions are portrayed so well, and it's even well shot. Like, and like Alan said, you can see like the clouds going over them and changing the filter on the camera, and it just, for some reason, it just really works there and like adds to the tension of the scene.
Okay.
So you want to go, Ryan?
Go ahead, Ryan.
Honestly, honestly, mine is when the down pilot is at the is around them at like the fire at the campfire, and he stands up behind like their like killer, and he sees the like markings in this in the butt of the gun pretty much, and he says, "Hey man, that'll eat you up inside," or something like that. And then he said, like, "It keeps me warm." And then another kid says about, "So how are we doing?" And he just walks off, because you can tell that like he's thankful that they pretty much saved him, but at the same time he's like, these kids are screwed in the head because of what's going on. Like, you can just tell that he's upset for them, and they don't see that.
Yeah, it gave me a little bit of Lord of the Fly vibes.
Yeah,
because like their whole group mentality kind of changes as they go on and are living in the mountains, and like the one does become a little bit too happy to kill.
Well, and that's why I think the introduction of the soldier character is so important, because he does do a good job of like checking them against themselves and being like, okay, look, I'm a part of the military. This is, a normal mentality for somebody who's been trained for something like this. Oh no, you guys have taken this a bit too far, and like, let me kind of compare you to something. And I thought that was a really effective tool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for me, I liked how quickly the film got into the action because it's very abrupt. Like you see the guys coming down outside the window, and then it's just into it for the next 15 minutes. You're going nonstop from the school to the convenience store up into the mountains. I just really like that quick transition, and then it's like, okay, now let's take a breather, and then it gets into the story, and it's like all pretty much slow paced from then on out. And it takes its time with the story. I really like that opening with the chase scene and like them all just like jumping in and out of the truck as they go and like piss on the radiator. So,
Hold on, does that work? Does that like as a dumb car guy, like does that actually work?
Yeah, it does. Yeah,
Yeah?
it's liquid.
Oh, it's just like any
water.
old liquid's fine.
Yeah, I mean, Devin. I mean,
I'm sure not
where
any
you were
old
living-
liquid, but
Yeah, Devin, like where you were living in LA, you can use water. You can use distilled water. It's fine, just
Weird.
as long as it doesn't get below the freezing temperature.
Okay, as long as it
Water's
doesn't freeze.
perfectly fine. You have to use antifreeze up here in Pennsylvania because you'll kill your engine if you use water.
Makes sense though. That's news to me. I'm glad I learned that.
Mhm.
all right, so what else do we want to talk about with Red Dawn?
well, I think you have to talk about the score. The music for this film. It's just as much. It makes it the propaganda film that it is. I mean, the guy's name is Basil something. Basil Podoris. But I mean, he is. He scored RoboCop. He scored Starship Troopers. This isn't his only kind of propaganda type film, and it. I mean, especially when I rewatched this last night, and I'm like, and I didn't know this up front, but I'm like, man, this reminds me so much of the just the theme of RoboCop. It's just got that feel to it. And then when I looked it up, it made so much sense that he did that. It just has it has that groove to it, and I think that was that music makes it that much more a propaganda film. And I know that's what it is, but I don't care. It is definitely a pro-America film. But I thought that music was always a big part of it.
No, now that we've made the RoboCop connection, I can definitely hear it in that. Because just like you, Josh, I am a movie score guy, and that does click now. I have to go back and re-listen to the score to this, but I can definitely tell the similarities there.
If you were to tell me that the guy that scored Free Willy did this film, I would have been like, no, that doesn't make any sense. Which he did. He also did Free Willy and Free Willy 2. But if you were to tell me Starship Troopers and RoboCop, I would say, yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah.
So, yep.
Well, I mean, about the propaganda part of this movie, like one of the things that I like about watching like war movies from the 70s and 80s is I have a scale of, is this Cold War propaganda or is this just a war movie? And this, on a scale from 1 to 10, this is like a 15, because this feeds into like every single person that I've ever known who is like a huge, and this is not negative, every person that I know who has been like a huge Second Amendment person, NRA, like when they talk about, like being able to fight back and, needing it in case something were to happen, this is what they're talking about. And because like the way that the dad was acting, the way that the shop owner was acting, how accessible firearms were. And then they do the giant scare where the Cuban guy's like, "Oh, go to the local store and pick up the 4472 forms,
Yep. I saw it. Yeah.
whatever they're called." And
Yeah.
then that gets into the whole like, "Oh, the government shouldn't be doing background checks because if we get invaded, the enemy is going to know what they are." Like, I had never seen this movie before, and there is so much that my grandfather had almost like a parrot repeated from this movie. I doubt that he'd ever seen it, but the mindset and the culture is there, and I feel like this movie's just wrapped around it.
So pretty much Ryan just said this is on a scale of 1 to 10 for propaganda films of the 80s, this is a 15. And he talked a little bit about
I pulled up Facebook, so I'm
Okay.
hearing him in like a minute
Okay.
minute
Oh,
late. And I was
cool.
like,
Okay.
he's going on for a while, so I got to hear it.
Okay.
So he
Okay.
talked about the 2A and the way that the parents were talking, and then when they pulled
Mhm.
the form and everything, it made sense. I definitely saw that when
Yeah.
I was like, oh yeah, that's what. And I'm not a huge 2A guy. I mean, I own a gun and everything, and I was in the military, and but yeah, I mean, I could definitely see how this is like happening in Red Dawn, guys. It's gonna happen in real life.
Yeah.
You know, it's the mantra on someone's wall that you know.
Yeah.
But I mean, at the same time, you know, I felt like it was at the time it was very realistic. You know, like it felt grounded, and when you look at the state of the nation back then, it felt like, you know, that could happen. You know?
Yeah, and that's where I actually really, really like this movie, even though I do consider it like that 15 on the scale, is the fact that for that time in the mid 80s, like this is what people like. This was their biggest fear at the time. This was our biggest fear as a nation, that we'd get invaded. So it works. It's just looking at it 30, 40 years later. There's
Yeah.
a lot of stuff that's very blatant in this that just doesn't, you know, like it's easier to see in hindsight than it was then. But yeah, back then for like the national fears, this is a home run.
Yeah.
So
I mean, even like literally historically speaking, the summer of '84 was the LA Olympics, and Russia boycotted the Olympics because of the tensions. So like this was crazy. Like this was topical.
No, I talked a little bit earlier about being a 90s baby and not really seeing much Cold War after effects. Like I didn't really know about how serious the tensions were growing up. Like it was only like watching movies and documentaries, like learning about the times. I was like, oh wow, we got really close to this. I didn't know anything about the Cold War growing up. Did you guys have anything in your lives growing up that like grandparents doing stuff like Ryan was saying? Because I didn't have
Rocky
any of that.
Four. Rocky Four.
Rocky Four.
You had Red Dawn in 1984, and then you had Rocky Four in 1985. That was my Cold War life right there.
Okay.
But again, that's 80s. So yeah.
Devin, how about you?
Did I have Cold War anything? No, I don't think I did. I mean, I think my grandma like just generally like distrusted Russians, and I wasn't sure where that ever came from.
I think your grandma, if it's the one I'm thinking of,
it is.
just didn't. She just distrusted everyone.
Everyone,
So
yeah.
I'm pretty sure she thought I was a communist. So
I'm sure she did. Did you do anything, Ryan?
Yeah, my elementary school in Alton, we did air raid drills.
Oh wow.
Yeah, my elementary school, like 1990, 1989, we were still doing air raid drills. And my grandfather, who was a proponent of black helicopters coming out of Colorado, he used quasi-McCarthy political logic on a lot of stuff.
Oh no.
oh wow.
Oh no.
Yeah, so I mean, like even after the Cold War was officially over and done with, and Russia was our friend for about 10 years, yeah, like the Cold War was prevalent in my family as a topic of conversation for a very long time.
I bet.
Yeah.
Oh man. So I don't know if this is too early to get into it, but I really want to talk about the sequel because I've heard
Remake.
different
Sequel?
things. The remake.
Thank you.
Because I've heard different things about it. I've been recommended it by some people. I've been told never go near it by other people. And I love me some Chris Hemsworth, right? I'll watch, Thor Ragnarok all day, every day. Like, what do you guys who've seen it, like, what do you think? And like, I'm, just curious.
I'm really curious to hear Ryan's defense of this film, but I was stoked. I mean, this was again, it was a film that I grew up on, and so when I heard they were remaking it, I thought, okay, here we go. I'm pretty sure there was some delays because of MGM was going through some stuff, and then I believe there was like further delays because they decided to change the villains from, I think, China to North Korea. Like, so they had to. There was something about they digitally went in and changed the flags and everything. And then something about that. I know it's a deeper story than that, but so there was all that subtext heading up to the film. Then the film finally released. And, I'm all about some dumb action, and I like me some Hemsworth and Josh Peck, and it was a decent cast, but I felt like it was half a film. Like, the 1984 was a slow crawl, and maybe that's just me. I do like a slow crawl, but I felt like it was a complete film. We saw this group from the beginning to the end, to the death of many of them, and to the to where the other two went. And sure, the whole war wasn't wrapped up by the end of the film, but you saw in my mind a full realization of the story of the Wolverines, of this group.
Right.
Whereas if I remember correctly, the remake stops like halfway through. Like, you got some, they definitely upped the ante with the action, but then like it's just this hoorah moment, and they storm one of the camps, and then that's it. Like, it just ends there. And I was like, I don't know if they were planning on making a sequel or something like that, but I just didn't. I felt like the characters were more surface level. They had less depth. Not to say that it was, the characters in the original were that deep, but you felt like you grew with them a little bit over the passage of time. I felt like the remake was just surface level with some modern action set pieces, and then like they forgot to make a complete movie. So I think I heard one of you say that Ryan believes it has a better story. I thought it had a lacking story or half a story in my mind.
Now, Ryan, when you said it had more story, did you mean it goes into more of like the stuff outside of the town, like more of the overall stuff?
So there are parts of the first one that when I was watching, I was like, "Oh, cool, this is going to happen." It doesn't. Like, that's a weird dynamic between these two characters, and all of and different things. And I'm thinking it has to do because I saw the remake first.
Sure.
But I like the dynamic between the brothers in the second one better than the dynamic in the with the brothers in the first one. The dynamic with the brothers in the second one, there's tension because the mom died, and then Chris Hemsworth's character goes off and becomes a Marine for 6 years, and then comes back. And then that night is when the North Koreans attack. So there's tension between the brothers, so they have to like heal their relationship so that they can trust each other during all the fighting. The commandos that they mention that that the Wolverines are going to get later in the movie, and then they're like, well, spring's a long way away. Well, instead of coming across a downed pilot, they come across 3 commandos that are looking for them because they've heard about the Wolverines and they're trying to get intel. And so they link up. Okay. So they actually work with the commandos. They deal a little bit with, they probably spend as much time with the villains as they do in the first one. I just like the dynamic of the overall villains in the second one more than I do the first one. Simply because because for a long time and some members of my family wouldn't stop talking about the Cold War, I'm sick of Russians, and so it was kind of a breath of fresh air for it not to be Russians.
Sure.
So there's that too.
It came at this time though where like North Korea always was like the big bad guy, and like everything was like, what if North Korea invaded? And I'm like, yeah, but really though.
And that's my thing, and that's my thing on it. One, because it's like the first one's kind of terrifying because we were with conflict with the Russians for so long that was a real possibility in a lot of people's heads. Me, for the past 10 years, whenever North Korea comes up or somebody in North Korea says something bad about the U.S., I just kind of roll my eyes because it's like the little yelper in the corner trying to sound big. And the thing is, like, I get it. They're dangerous. They have weapons. They're unhinged. Yeah, there's that. We signed a treaty with the South Koreans to help protect the border, and we have troops in harm's way. So, I mean, there's definitely, there's definitely a threat. I completely understand that. But the fact that it's the North Koreans invading with the help of the Russians, because they mention in that the Russians took the whole eastern seaboard while the North Koreans took the western with a few other countries. It's less. It doesn't give me as much anxiety because it's the North Koreans. Because I'm like, okay, yeah, the North Koreans would never do this. So there's that too.
Okay.
Feels more like fantasy then. So
yeah.
So what do you think of? So Ryan, one of the things Ryan had mentioned was that he just liked the dynamic of the relationship of the brothers in the remake more than the original. What did you guys like? Knowing that that's what the dynamic is, does that in the remake where they have to learn to trust each other? Does that sound more interesting than this one to you guys? I just think it sounds different for the sake of being different.
I mean,
all right, go ahead.
I mean, just knowing the actors that are there, like it's Chris Hemsworth and Josh Peck. Like, I don't know if I could take that dynamic seriously because I just expect Josh Peck to be like, "Hug me, brother," and like, especially 2012, Chris Hemsworth. I feel like if you were to remake this now with action comedy star Chris Hemsworth, like leaning into his comedy chops a little bit more, making his characters a little bit more lighthearted like he has been, I feel like I might enjoy that a little bit more than the remake. I'm gonna probably watch it here this week on I guess it's on TBS, so I'll get the censored version just like I'm in high school.
Good.
I haven't seen the remake in a long time, but I just double checked. I was like, well, maybe Josh Peck just really wanted an action film after he wasn't really involved in the Hunger Games action, but they came out the same year, Hunger Games and Red Dawn. So I'm guessing I think because of how delayed it was, he actually filmed this one before then. I was listening to Ryan a little bit on Facebook so I could get a sense of what he was saying.
Cool.
They made Hemsworth a Marine, and I thought that cheapened the story a little bit. I liked the idea of, he's the older brother, but he's just the jock that is working at the gas station. He's none of them are Marines or built for war or anything like that. Some of them had gone camping and hunting with their dad, but none of them were like experts or anything, and they had to learn over time, and they had to trust each other and everything. I thought that was a better dynamic in the original. But to be fair, I could have been looking at the remake with jaded eyes, and it's been a long time. I think I should go back and try it out. I just felt like when I think about it, I feel like the remake wanted to be like Olympus Has Fallen version of Red Dawn instead of what Red Dawn was, which was this smaller story. That was very contained. But I also heard him talking about the difference between Russia and North Korea, and Russia was kind of like they were the villains for a long time, and North Korea has been the villains for a long time. And I think it's just easy because, and I think that speaks to part of the what they did when they went back and changed it to North Korea, is that North Korea is easy to hate. Like, they are the villains, they are the modern villains. We don't have much ties. We don't have much contracts or trade with them. I mean, if you got into some of America's current allies and the really nitty gritty of it, you'll see a lot of nasty stuff behind the curtains, but we have trade deals with China, and we have things with Russia and everything. So, you don't want to piss them off too much, but it's easy to be like, North Korea, they're evil. Somehow they got this army. And when I was in South Korea, I definitely felt that vibe that it's very real for them. I mean, propaganda rained down from the skies when I was there. It was very real. We had North Korean spies on our base. I rode in a car with one and then found out a month later that he was a spy. So they are very, on a map, they look very small, and they're always, big talk and small stick type thing. But they are legit evil, and it's easy to paint them as such. But they aren't continent size Russia. So it's, I can understand that it's kind of harder to take them seriously sometimes.
Yeah, because the thing is, like, for the people who live in South Korea, I definitely feel, because they are 100% under threat. Seoul is within artillery distance of the North Korea, South Korea, is of the no man's land area. So I definitely get that South Korea is terrified about the whole, about the whole situation. The only when I'm talking about the whole, like looking at North Korea is like the small dog in the corner. I'm talking about the fact that we're so far away from them. And that whenever they make the threats of like, oh, death to America, death to this, and that, and it's like, you guys can't even make a ballistic missile that goes more than like a few hundred miles off your shore. And then of course talking with, some people who are like really afraid over here of like North Korea, and I'm like, you don't have to be afraid of North Korea living in the States. Maybe a cyber attack by China and Russia, and then they'll piggyback off of it. Yeah, but North Korean, it's like the North Koreans launching a missile that's going to hit, like the mid part of the is of the 48. That's the Mount St. Helens going to blow again before that happens.
Well, I think it's interesting just that the new Red Dawn, or the remake, opted to go for that, because I think it's along the same lines as the original, where it's more of a sign of the times. Like, it's looking at the original Red Dawn from our eyes, especially, us 90s kids who are like, we never experienced any of the Cold War. It's interesting to see what it was like then, in probably the same way that, the remake is going to be interesting for other people to watch when they're like, oh, you were worried about North Korea back then. Interesting. Like knowing how that all turns out.
They also use like EMP is like a big thing of how they break down our defenses when they come into America, and then the EMP trope, like if that's used in like every big movie. Oh my God, they got an EMP. They shut us all down. So,
right.
It wouldn't be a season of 24 if they didn't bring up EMPs.
Right.
Exactly. I felt like they just took it from that. Yeah. One other thing about North Korea, I know this isn't the North Korea podcast, but when I was living over there, they had a beached submarine. Our bases and our Navy and everything always did things out there. Well, they did too. And they had a beached submarine that beached south of no man's land and on South Korean territory. And we were dispatched, and Korean troops were dispatched. Before we got there, the South Koreans killed everyone on the sub. So
they don't play.
Some people believe that there's still like a civil war where there's families that are cut off between there. It's been so long from that. It's not necessarily the same thing. I think the South Koreans are kind of afraid that if the border ever fell, that their economy wouldn't be able to take care of the people that live up there. But there's no love lost. The townspeople killed everybody on that sub before the military could get there. So that was a crazy incident for sure.
Wow. Yeah, because they're it's I've heard especially during it was like 4 4 years ago when the last time tensions between the U.S. and North Korea kind of hit like a high point. I remember listening to a lot of interviews from people that, mainly like history and cultural professors that worked in Seoul or worked in the U.S., and they would talk about, you know, the different things that they would notice. And the whole thing about like the unification part, they made a comment that it was one of those things where it's like, one of the things that North Korea constantly says, but nobody really takes them seriously on, is like, we want peace if the U.S. would leave, and then we will peacefully talk to, you know, Seoul. And then of course everybody that's on the South Korean side are like, no, that's not going to happen. We're not going to, you know, it's like, leave these people here defenseless.
Right.
So yeah. It's a whole situation.
All right, so we're getting to the end of the conversation here. Any final thoughts or final things we want to bring up about Red Dawn before we end things?
As a kid growing up, I loved the camaraderie. I loved the characters in this. I thought it was really neat to see, young American kids put in a terrible situation. They didn't, and then they painted it so bleakly. You know, even when they brought the girls in, there wasn't this budding romance between the lead and one of the girls. You know, like they were always at each other's necks. And then, bringing in the one Air Force guy. Which I did end up working on F-15, so I always thought that was cool. The Eagle driver, he was a neat dynamic, and I loved. I understand it's a propaganda film, but God, it was done so well. It feels like Captain America 1, you know, like when they wanted to show you the beautiful country plains of America when the brothers are sitting in like the wheat field, you know, with the sun. It's just a gorgeous film, and yeah, you can break it down and be like, all right, it's definitely propaganda, but it felt great to a young kid who was just like, oh, what if the most horrible things would happen, and would I be amongst the group, and would I go up into the hills, and would I avenge my parents and everything? It's a classic film that doesn't have a lot of story and complication to it. You can just watch it and just kind of be engulfed by the very contained story. And it's something that, you know, when I used to have cable TV, if it ever came on, I watched it. I couldn't not watch it. So, yeah.
I mean, to make it fair, I judge every military government film as propaganda, and I put it on the scale. So there are ones and zeros, but everything gets put on the propaganda scale.
Good.
Devin, how about you?
No, I mean, just to echo almost that same point, like, part of the fun of this movie, watching it when you're in high school social studies class, is like, all right, which one of my friends would be the one that kills the traitor? It'd probably be me. Alan, you'd be dead first. Alan, you'd be dead first.
I probably would be.
You wouldn't even made it on the truck. Like, that was part of the fun of
Wait
this.
for me, guys!
You're right. Like, that's what I loved about this movie. It's fun. I like it a lot.
I didn't have a car in high school, so I'd be taking the bus.
Not to mention, the badass of the group is played by C. Thomas Howell. My last name is Howell, so I would always say that would be me. That would be me.
I love that.
Yeah, I love that.
Ryan, how about you?
My mind just went blank.
Oh
no. Are we talking about who we would be?
No.
Or
no, final thoughts.
Yeah, I got lost in the conversation. Final thoughts, okay. I got lost in that conversation. No, I mean, I definitely liked it. It was definitely a different take on the story that I thought that it was mainly going to be. Like, there were some key differences. I think all of the stuff that I like and he like are different. Like, there's key aspects that I enjoy better than he does, and vice versa. So, I mean, it's good. I like it. If you like 80s war films, this is right up everybody's alley, as far as I'm concerned.
All right.
Especially if you like Russian tacky paratrooper outfits.
Yeah, for me, this is a film very of its time. It's very enjoyable. It's very simple. It's an interesting take on the 80s and war, like the Cold War in and of itself. And get it, like, I'm fascinated by the whole World War III world that this establishes, and I want to see more of this story. There weren't any like direct-to-video sequels to this, were there?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I mean, if you want to call Rocky IV like a spiritual sequel to
Okay.
it,
Yeah.
I feel like, Rocky went over to Russia to be like, we forgive you for Red Dawn,
Yeah.
and we can be friends now. Just watch those two back to
If
back.
I can change, you can change.
You
We can
can
all-
change.
yeah.
Everybody can change. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, Josh, where can people find you on the internet?
Go to Nerfherders Assemble. We're on Facebook. We're on YouTube. That's the podcast. If you're into sci-fi comics and books and fantasy books, you can find me fierceliterature.com. That's where I write. That's where I've met most of my nerd buddies is through there or through cons and everything. And I love chatting about stuff. So yeah, thanks for having me on to chat about this.
No problem. We'll love to have you back again sometime, because you gave us a great list of films, and we had a hard time picking out one to talk about. So we'll definitely welcome you back. Hopefully we won't have as many technical issues next time. For anyone watching, make sure to follow us on Twitch if you're watching us there. If you're not, go ahead and head over to Twitch and follow us there. You can watch us weekly on our Facebook page and our Twitch channel. We also post these episodes on our YouTube channel. You can head over there and subscribe. You can also listen to this podcast wherever you get your podcasts. We're on all major podcasting platforms. And make sure to follow us on Instagram to get the latest updates on our show streams, Devin's gaming streams, and Ryan's laptop issues. But thanks again, Josh from Nerfherders Assemble, for joining us to talk about Red Dawn. For You Have to Watch This Podcast, I'm Alan.
I'm Ryan.
And I'm Devin.
And I just remembered we didn't talk about what we're watching next week. Next week it's Ryan's pick. Ryan, what are you having us watch?
Finally going to get Devin to watch a bunch of these blockbusters I can't believe he hasn't seen. So we're going to start off everything with Alien.
All right. So we're watching...
Can't wait.
We're watching Ridley Scott's Alien next week. A film Devin's never seen.
Never seen it.
So
I cannot wait.
Yeah.
Classic.
Yep. All right. Let's try this again. For You Have to Watch This Podcast, I'm Alan.
I'm Ryan.
And I'm Devin.
And we'll see you next week. Wolverines!